What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jay Rich back for week 7 waivers. Yes, week 7 is now here. Monday Night Football tonight. Who cares? Broncos, Chargers. I might watch it. I might not watch it. ALDS tonight. Yankees, Guardians. I'm kind of excited for that game. But we are here to talk waivers, so I will not waste any more time about what I'm watching tonight. And I got a bit of flack. Honestly, people were like, Jordan, why are you talking so fast? Why does everyone have to get through things so quickly? I don't want to waste your time. It's very simple. I don't want this video to be 20 minutes. I'm trying to get the information as quickly and concisely as possible. But I do want to do a quick review of what we talked about last week. We talked about Kenneth Walker, Ramondre Stevenson, Brian Robinson. All were great, all scored touchdowns, mostly were widely owned. Rachaad White, unfortunately, did not get that much work because, well, let's just face it, Tom Brady, he's washed. Can't trust him. The Bucs should have dominated the Steelers and didn't. So, not much I can do there. Jacoby Myers had a good game, and Alec Pierce scored a touchdown. So that was good for everyone who did pick up Alec Pierce. He did make the list again today, but just to really say that he's startable again this week. That's really the only reason why I'm saying it, but Alec Pierce, start him again, and then we talked about Khalil Shakur. Didn't get involved that much. Isaiah McKenzie as well, not involved that much. What are you going to do, man? Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, they're good. And Devin Singletary did quite a bit as well. We talked about Taysom Hill and Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram did have a pretty good game, so we'll take it. I believe it was 5 for 40. Trevor Lawrence vultured 2 touchdowns from everybody, so not much we can do there. And Taysom Hill ran the ball a little bit, but not a lot to write home with him. I'm glad, and I hope you guys didn't spend too much money on him on the waiver wire. And the 2 streamers of the week, Jimmy Garoppolo and Justin Fields, both were fine. Not the best options, but I think both of them performed admirably. So, now that we kind of talked through that, this week, I gotta be honest, it's not looking too good for the waiver wire. There's some receivers, of course, like there is every week, but outside of that, not looking so good. So, we'll start with the running back position. First guy is Kenyan Drake. Kenyan Drake coming off a 100-yard game for the Baltimore Ravens, and J.K. Dobbins did leave with knee tightness, soreness, whatever it was. We'll see if it lingers into this week. I wouldn't put a ton of fab on Kenyan Drake, but he's clearly going to be the top option if anything happens. Now, again, it feels gross. Don't put a ton of fab on him, but I think he's worth picking up if you can get him because the Browns defense they face this week is god-awful, and they are bad, right? We saw Ramondre Stevenson, what he did to them. Honestly, it's been all year with the Browns, so you do want to have a shot at Kenyan Drake if you can get it. Outside of that, though, not seeing a ton I like as far as running backs on the waiver wire. That is unfortunate because I did skip over bye weeks. We have the Bills, the Vikings, the Eagles, and the Rams. So a lot of positions to replace this week, especially 2 big-time quarterbacks, and the streaming options are not great. As far as running backs in the deep capacity, I think Jaylen Warren is viable. I'm not saying I would go after him. He only saw 2 opportunities this week, which is not good. In a matchup that was close, and Mike Tomlin saying he should be more involved. I hoped he could get more involved. But this week they play the Miami Dolphins, and so they're the second worst team allowing passes to the running back position, and that's why he can be an option. He's a guy who can catch passes out of the backfield. He has been playing more on 3rd downs, but outside of that, there's not a lot to like as far as running backs, and I'm concerned. People picked up Eno Benjamin last week, didn't work out. People were picking up the Atlanta running backs, not working out. So I don't really want to go after any of those guys. Jaylen Warren could be an option. Like I mentioned, deep leagues only, really. Unfortunately, you got to replace Dalvin Cook, maybe Devin Singletary, Miles Sanders. There's just not a lot on the market right now for you guys to pick up. It's going to be more flex options. Hopefully you have some RB depth because it's just very bleak out there on the waiver wire right now. That's pretty much it I've seen for running backs. Let me know who you're trying to targeting and I can give you some thoughts on them. Those are the only 2 that kind of stuck out from a matchup perspective. Again, this is week to week, and there is some long-term, but nobody long-term this week. But week to week, I see Drake, I see Warren. Those are the 2 options. Outside of that, not seeing a ton that I like. But let's get to wide receiver. Right off the bat, Michael Gallup, 50% owned in leagues. So people are going to say, I can't get Michael Gallup. He's been owned for weeks. I get it. 50% of leagues, he is available. So if you can pick up Michael Gallup, big thing. Dak is back. The deep passing game should be there. And they play Detroit this week. I'd love to say stream Tony Pollard, stream Zeke Elliott, but those guys are owned. So I can't do that. But I think that Michael Gallup could finally be unlocked with Dak Prescott back on the field. Again, can you start him? Maybe. We'll see. But I think that at least he will have more opportunities this week, and that's what's more important. Rondale Moore, available in about 40 or owned in about 40% of leagues. So there is some opportunity there for Rondale Moore. Now, Hollywood Brown did get injured. We are suspecting a Liz Frank injury and potentially out for the entire season. What does that mean for Rondale Moore? Not a lot, to be honest. People are going to say, oh, Rondale Moore this, Rondale Moore that. He has had 6 receptions in back-to-back weeks, but the Hollywood injury doesn't change anything. What's going on, everybody? This is Jordan from the future. Robbie Anderson has now been traded to the Arizona Cardinals. What does this mean for Rondale Moore? And as I'm talking about him as a waiver wire pickup, in my opinion, doesn't mean a whole lot. I think over the long term, it could mean something for Rondale Moore and what his targets may look like, but I think it says a lot more about what we're seeing from Marquise Brown and what his injury could be as far as the severity. And so for me, it doesn't change how I feel about Rondale Moore. It just makes me see, well, maybe the upside that we saw before isn't quite what it's going to be, because there will be Robbie Anderson, who is talented in his own right. We will have DeAndre Hopkins there. We know that Zach Ertz is going to be a problem and see a ton of targets. And then there's Rondale Moore. So it's hard to say how involved Robbie will be, especially early on. He probably won't be. He's not going to play this week. If he does, he'll probably run limited routes, so I'm not too concerned about that. I think Rondale Moore is a safe pickup for this week, but we'll see in the future how this impacts his snap share and his targets going forward. Not overly worried about Robbie. I think it says a lot more about Marquise Brown than it does about Rondale Moore. Why? Because DeAndre Hopkins is back this week. He's back from suspension. He could be a little bit rusty, but overall, he will be the alpha in the offense. Even with Hollywood there, I still think DeAndre Hopkins is probably the alpha in the offense. So again, Rondale Moore, a guy that you can pick up. I think he could be an option. I think a lot of people will go after him though, so I'm not all in on Rondale Moore, but he does play Thursday night against the Saints. The Saints have been terrible, allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers over since week 3, not since the beginning of the season, but since Lattimore's been out. Lattimore's not projected to be back again, so it just frees up more options for these guys. All the corners have to slide up in that defense. Hasn't been a good recipe for success for the Saints corner so far. They've been getting torched over the past few weeks. We saw it with Geno Smith. We saw it again this week with Joe Burrow. I think that Kyler Murray could have similar success this week against that Saints defense. I briefly touched on Alec Pierce to start this show. He is startable again. He's facing the 2nd worst defense against opposing wide receivers, Tennessee Titans. So another great matchup for Alec Pierce. He did score a touchdown last week, so I do like him again this week. If you can pick him up or didn't pick him up last week, he is definitely an option that I do like. Now, I want to talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's not a sexy ad. You may not see that many people talking about him. He could be a guy you kind of sneak through your waivers a little bit if he doesn't get that much hype this week, but he is more of a deeper target, right? So that's the big thing, is that if you're in these, shallower leagues, I wouldn't necessarily go after DPJ, but he is an option. And the reason why is because he's facing the 3rd worst defense against wide receivers this season in the Ravens. The Ravens are bad, man, like really bad. So there is another option here for DPJ to have another good game. He's had 4 receptions and 50 yards in the last 3 games at minimum. He's had 70 yards in 2 of the last 3 games. So he's getting those deep targets. Early in the year, it was tough for DPJ. He wasn't getting the ball, but more recently, he has been more involved. And facing a team that has allowed the big play in the past, I think there is opportunity for DPJ to be startable in this divisional matchup. So I wouldn't necessarily be throwing a ton of fab. I said, 2-3% in my notes, but I do think that he is a guy that you can potentially start in a pinch. You see, you got Gabe Davis, you got Stephon Diggs, you got Justin Jefferson, you got AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Cooper Kupp. All these guys are on bye this week. So you got to pick up somebody, and maybe in a deeper league, DPJ could be the guy that gets done for you. And the last guy I do want to touch on is Tyquan Thornton. Tyquan Thornton had a modest game in week 5, but in week 6, he did get much more involved. He ran a route on 76.4% of Bailey Zappi's dropbacks. Obviously, we saw Zappi go off for over 300 yards, and I do think that Thornton will be a bigger part of this offense. 2nd round pick, 4.2 wheels. He is blazing fast, and you saw that on his jet sweep where he scored a touchdown. He will get more involved throughout the year. I don't know if you can start him this week. They do play a pretty good defense in the Bears, and so I wouldn't necessarily be all in. I think it will be more of a low-scoring affair, but Tyquan Thornton is definitely a guy you want to keep your eye on, and in deep leagues, you could potentially pick him up and start him. Again, I don't love the matchup, Monday Night Football against the Bears. Say what you want about the Bears. Their defense has been pretty good, so I'm not necessarily going all after Tyquan Thornton, but for future weeks, he could be a guy that you are starting in your lineups. Now, that's it for the wide receivers. Let's get into the quarterbacks now. My quarterback streams of the week. I'm looking at Davis Mills and Teddy Bridgewater. So Teddy Bridgewater came in relief of Skylar Thompson for some reason. Threw for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, which isn't great. But he plays the Steelers this week. The Steelers, while they played good against Tom Brady, I still believe in Teddy Bridgewater to air it out. And that's just the truth. Every time he's come in, he's thrown for a ton of yards. He's throwing touchdowns. He gets the ball to 2 guys, Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. And any smart quarterback who plays on the Miami Dolphins will be doing that each and every week. We know they're game breakers. Their speed is just impossible to cover, especially for a dismantled defense like the Steelers. We'll see who they have back this week. But even still, I think I would trust Teddy Bridgewater to start in this matchup. Now, you also have Davis Mills, who feels really gross up against the Raiders, who have been the worst team in a points per game basis, allowing points to the quarterback position, which is a bit surprising. Now, they are 1-4, so it's not entirely surprising, but the big thing here is both teams are coming off a bye, so they will be well prepped for this game, but at least it's a fair fight. You know, it's not like the Texans are coming off a game this past week, and now they have to pay the Raiders coming off the bye. Both teams had adequate time to prepare for this matchup. We know that Dameon Pierce will be able to run the ball effectively like he has all season. And I do think if you are really in a bind this week, Davis Mills is not a bad start. Like I mentioned, the streamers this week are not looking good. I'm not liking what I'm seeing. And even for tight end, I don't know what the hell to do with tight end. I'm not seeing much there. I may drop some tight end streamers in the comments as I kind of do some more research and we get some more data. But I didn't find anything I liked this week, so I kind of just left it out. Evan Ingram, like I mentioned last week, I think you could use him again this week. It's gross at tight end. We don't even really want to go there. We may see Mitch Trubisky this week, which is just, I don't even want to talk about that. But these are the guys I'm looking at this week, and these are the guys I think you can target. Like I mentioned, running back is tough. Kenyan Drake and Jaylen Warren in deeper leagues. Wide receiver, you have Michael Gallup, Rondale Moore, who plays on Thursday Night Football, so make sure you do check out for that. Alec Pierce, if you haven't already picked him up, even though you watched my video last week. Donovan Peoples-Jones in deeper leagues and Tyquan Thornton in deeper leagues are all options at wide receiver. And like I mentioned, Davis Mills and Teddy Bridgewater as my QB streamers of the week. I slightly prefer Teddy Bridgewater over Davis Mills, but I think both have opportunity to be, maybe high-end QB2s, maybe not back-end QB1s outside of Bridgewater if he really throws the ball a lot. But I expect, these are guys that probably be QB2s. You want a QB1, draft one, right? Like, there's a lot of QBs that are on bye this week, so you have to do something. And I think you could do worse options than these two guys. We hit on them last week. I'm not feeling as confident this week, but maybe, just maybe, you get it done. I actually thought about talking about Jimmy Garoppolo again this week, although I don't know. Kansas City is a good defense, man. To the point of he should be down in this one and have to throw a lot. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. But those are the guys I'm targeting this week. Those are the guys I'd be picking up off the waiver wire. It's not great, but this is the information we have so far. If I see anything else that I like, I will make sure to let you know in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you drop me a like and subscribe for future content. And if I helped you at all this week, please let me know, and let me know who you are targeting on the waiver wire down in the comments, and I'd be happy to talk through any questions you guys may have. Until next week, good luck everyone, and I'll see you guys later. I'm out. Peace.